From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
All right, everyone, we are going to take a bit of a trip through time. Maybe in time, behind, backwards in time, essentially. It's going to be exciting. Let's jump into a message that we got from Phil. Phil D, here is what you said. So I'm writing to share with you an experience that you can share if you ever find a place to put it. You have discussed UFOs, abduction, blacking out, lost time, and many other kinds of displacement phenomena. What happened to me was a bit odd in comparison. I have lived in St. Louis, Missouri, for over 30 years. In this time, I've needed to drive to the other side of the state at least twice a year. On the afternoon of August 21st, 2003, I finished my business with Springfield, and I'm prepping for the drive east. Lunch is over, I've gassed up my truck, and I have soda for the road. You have to get ready for these things. It's 3 hours and 15 minutes with no stopping. Yeah, that's a side detail you should know about me. Large numbers nerd. Numbers, you can always count on them.
Zing.
I start my truck pulling out of the gas station. It's 1:07 p.m. Remember that number, everybody, 1:07 p.m. I hit the streets and steer my way on up to the I-44 eastbound. It's 1:11 p.m. Triple single-digit bonus. I slip my Bjork Greatest Hits disc in and jam on the drive home. But I run into one small issue with those plans. At 1:34 p.m., I'm turning off I-44 onto I-270 South, and Bjork is still performing. Only 23 minutes have passed. Now, essentially what Phil is saying is that this trip that should have taken 3 hours and 15 minutes only took 23 minutes in total, somehow. And this is according to the clocks that he's been monitoring the situation on. And he goes on to say, some are convinced I misread the time. It was 11:11 a.m. and misread it as 1:11 a.m. That, sounds probable, but let's continue. He says, a devout number fanatic misreading the clock twice within 5 minutes is not likely. Even if it was 11:11, instead of 23 minutes, the time from Springfield to, where he was going to that intersection was 2 hours and 23 minutes. Somebody could do that in a tuned sports car, but there's no way I could do it in a fully laden work truck. The time would still be 45 minutes fast. Arriving 45 minutes ahead of time is one thing. Getting there 2 hours and 45 minutes before schedule is mind-boggling. It isn't every day that you're given time by the universe.
Instead of taking it away.
Exactly. That's why we're bringing this up, right? Because we had just talked about experiences where people have lost time through some kind of experience or abduction phenomena or belief that they've been abducted. So yeah, go ahead, Ben. What do you think?
Well, the first thing I would say is, of course, thank you for writing in, Phil. As Matt said, this is something that is a bit unusual for us to hear. One thing I immediately thought of when one thing I immediately thought was probably not relevant was elevation. Phil, as a fan of numbers, you're probably already aware that time does move faster at different elevations, infinitesimally faster, right? Clocks flown at 30,000 feet run faster than those left behind on the ground. And when we experience time dilation, we're just, if we're astronauts, right? We're exploring the universe. We come back. We're in kind of a Rip Van Winkle situation because the people we left behind have aged at Earth rate, and we have aged at space rate.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of sci-fi films and fiction address that, and the physics there is solid as well. This has been something, the idea of time dilation and altitude has been something since the days of Einstein and his predictions. But with this, I really appreciate the objectivity, saying that I could have misread the time once, but how likely am I to have misread it twice? The tough thing is that there's not a photograph, because who on earth or off it would take photographs of their clock every time they looked at it? That's what Apple does every time they look at your iOS.
Right.
That's what they're for.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, so the implication is there was like some sort of blip? Like I don't believe there's
Well, I mean, theoretically, there are a lot of things we could discuss here. I mean, what he seems to be describing is a wormhole, essentially, of time that he passed through somehow and then ended up on the other side, or fast forward somehow occurred. But the weirdest thing for me in all of the details in the story is that he had a playlist of Bjork playing, like of music,
which he was familiar with.
Yeah,
right.
Too.
And
it's a great way to mark time.
It is.
And
especially if you, like you said, if you're familiar with an album or a set of songs and the order and everything, you get a feel of how long it takes to get through all that stuff. And he's saying he left, and then 23 minutes later, he was there. I mean, unless you're pulling our leg, Phil, you experience something very weird.
I think we can, at the very least, all agree on that.
Yeah, and I would also say, we don't fully understand time in general. Time is relative, sure. Time is also experiential, and to a great degree, our emphasis on time and our understanding of it comes from our understanding of, the culture in which we as individuals are raised. So there are a lot of unanswered questions, especially when we can get to the very small and very big parts of what we call reality, or our neighborhood of it. Phil, it feels like it's unfair to immediately say, you just misread the time, probably because of those, even putting aside your own personal focus on all things numerical. It seems important to note that, we made that point about the playlist being something you're probably familiar with, unless it's the first time you heard it. Also that you checked the time twice. Also that this seems like a route you've driven before. You know what I mean? So you're familiar with the route as well. One thing that happens a lot when people drive familiar roads and they listen to familiar songs or familiar shows, maybe like this one, we're all kind of creatures of ritual, right? So we tend to lose time, as Matt, you said, in the opposite direction, because we encounter what's called road hypnosis or self-hypnosis. We're still driving carefully, and we're driving cogently, but unless something unusual happens, we're just kind of out of it. You know what I mean? Lower activity in some parts of our brain come to when we turn right into our driveways.
Not to mention, if you are listening to an album that you're intimately familiar with, almost to the point of hypnosis, where it's just kind of background music, where you're not really cued in on every little change, you're just so used to it, you're just experiencing it, and it's kind of blending into the background or blending into your, kind of trancey road situation, which I've been there. Back when I used to have a CD changer in my car, that's really, honestly, when that happens the most, is because you'd have the same 5 CDs in your car and you would just listen to them like on a loop, and it would just become ritualized and sort of like embedded in the fabric of your whole driving experience, especially if it was a longer drive.
So, yeah, no, for sure. Phil, I'm on Google Maps doing a little testing here to see on I-44, I believe that's the one you were mentioning. Yes, I-44 and I-270, looking at the exchange there. If you were to drive 23 minutes roughly on that road, heading outward, so outbound from the exchange there, going south on I-44, it looks like maybe this is what happened. You ended up at the Pacific Palisades Conservation Area and the surrounding nature areas over there, and you ended up fishing there, and you didn't realize it. And you thought you were in Springfield, but you ended up there accidentally.
Shouldn't have made that wrong turn at Albuquerque. Is that a thing?
No, I'm only joking. Yes, but I'm only joking there. It's really weird to think about this, you guys, and it makes me think what you're saying there, Ben. If I put on a really familiar album and I'm on the road, it does, especially like you said, like commutes. Feels like it just occurs and it's gone. Or even podcasts sometimes, if I'm listening, maybe like you are now and on the road or something, it feels as though time has just gone by.
But that goes in the other direction, though. You know what I mean? You see, that's what makes this such a interesting story here, is because what if, like, what was happening there, Phil? Did you tune out to the sweet sounds of Bjork and then just redline your truck all the way? Like, did it just happen not to get pulled over or clocked, or ever think, wow, I am ripping it with the lead foot today? I will say that I am not surprised that the most common feedback you're getting is people saying you misread the time. The reason I'm not surprised is because that is the most mundane explanation. However, and I think you're being very fair about writing that out in this correspondence with us. However, I would say that you are. I could see what's confusing because the details you include. You know, I keep going back to the playlist. What I would think is interesting, and this is taking a page from Matt's grimoire here, but what I think you might consider doing, if you're in for an adventure, is retracing the route with the same music and start at 1:07 p.m.
Ooh.
Get all the variables as close as you can and see if you can reproduce this, and then tell us what happens.
Yes.
What do you guys think? Is that crazy?
No.
Am I like demanding too much time from Phil?
No, dude, he's got to get on the highway at 1:11 p.m.
He's got an extra 2 hours and 45 minutes from the universe, right? So you could probably,
he's gonna,
use the change.
Well, he said he's going fishing, right? That's or no, doing business in Springfield. Yep. So he's got to head over to Springfield again, do some trout fishing.
The other Springfield.
Yeah, the other one. Or is this just a Simpsons joke that I'm not getting? Maybe that's what this is. Maybe this whole thing is a Simpsons joke that I just am missing.
Perhaps. But, maybe the entirety of the universe and the way we perceive it is some sort of joke. We just don't know who the joke is for. Hopefully it's for us. Hopefully we're the audience of the joke and not the subject. But that's a question for another day. And I guess everything we know about stand-up and crowd work shows us those two groups are not mutually exclusive.
There you go.
Great. That's where we got God as an insult comic. I hope that is not the case.
Wow.
We're the punchline. But yeah, drive safe, Phil. And seriously, I know it sounds like a little bit of a jest, but I would love to hear back from you. I don't know if you guys are on board with this, but I would love to hear back from Phil if he does this experiment again. You know what I mean?
Dash cam.
Dash cam. But here's the other thing I'm thinking too, Matt. If we learned anything about our explorations of quantum physics when we're looking at dreams, when we're looking at the passage of time, then would having extra observers there, whether a dash cam or say another person riding shotgun, would that be too much of a monkey wrench to throw in there?
That's a good
dash
question.
cam though. Yeah.
Oh, a dash cam would be good. Yeah. Because, it's one of those things you see in like sci-fi movies where when these kind of time jumps happen on security cameras, and then all of a sudden like the clock on this, like the time code jumps on the security camera too. That would be a trippy thing to see if that
like
happens.
in Contact.
That's right.
I
do remember
with
Contact.
Jodie Foster.
Dude, that was
there were
intense.
parts of that movie I really liked. I agree.
I thought it was a very Carl Sagan-y kind of interesting take on all of that stuff. And I really quite enjoyed it. But you're right. There also are parts of it that were not as good.
I just said there are parts of it that I really like.
That's fair, Ben. That's fair. Cool story either way, and a fun thought experiment, which I'm always a big fan of.